got this, what he just can't think of.
14 and 9. Oh, it's fine. I mean, he put that lip back in it, it was ridiculous. Yes, it was.
Oh, yeah. You got no, you can't turn on. And you're how we move off the Friday. That keeps you right there. What was
I think there was supposed to be like a celebration or something for your wife. Yes.
This is regular.
Yes. If I see the for sale sign here in there, I would be a happy dance.
That's how we got.
Yes. I know they were really cranky about driving. I've heard. Well, it's funny because I drove the turnpike for 14 years, and my lane is hidden from the turnpike side. My husband works for North Huntington. He has no. We are.
It's dry. You ain't dry. It's not dry.
I'd like to call a special meeting of the North Huntington Township Board of Commissioners for Thursday, July 13, 2017 at 7:02 p.m. Roll call, manager, early, sorry.
Commissioner Harold. Here. Commissioner Hayes. Here. Commissioner Bertan. Here. Commissioner Gray. Here. Commissioner Facenda. Here. Commissioner Casera. Here. Commissioner Martino.
Here. Everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anybody who would like to speak tonight, please sign the book at the podium. Remember, this meeting is being electronically recorded and video streamed. First citizen is Carl Bouchard. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Carl Bouchard, 10050 John Drive, North Huntington, PA. I'm president of the New Orleans Historic Society. Continue?
Yes.
All right, thank you. First of all, the objective that I have tonight, and just be brief, is to present to the board relevant information and to allow the board to consider what the township can do to preserve a log house, which I'll describe in a few minutes, at its current site or elsewhere in the township. It's come to light over the past maybe few weeks that there's a log house on 380 Robin Stations Road that as the house was in the process of being demolished, as the initial brick was torn away, a log cabin was underneath that facade. The conventional wisdom for a long time has been that the house, the log cabin, perhaps could have been a William Penn land office. And the local folklore pointed towards that, which brought, I guess, the immediacy to the locals about what can be done. Should this thing be demolished, hopefully be preserved? There's a lot of confusion and a lot of bluster over what could happen to this historic site. So I got involved as an Historical Society president, and we then had a archaeological firm, the Chris Davis firm located in Verona, do a study of which it's about a 10-page report. 4 of the pages are written, and these pages will be presented to you tomorrow morning for your perusal. And then you can hopefully discuss among yourselves what you find from the report. But if I could just briefly say that if I could read the introduction, that is only a couple sentences long. The subject property is located at 380 Robin Stations Road and currently consists of 0.88 acres, though historically it contained 0.5 acres. 0.5 acres until it was expanded to its current size in 1926. During the process of demolishing the existing residence, an encapsulated log house was discovered beneath more recent siding materials. Due to the early and important history of the area, Norton Historical Society contracted Christine Davis Consultants to conduct historic research to determine the age, original ownership, and function of the log house. There was some interest in the close proximity of Braddock's Road that passed approximately 500 feet to the south of the property and the nearby location of Clay Pike, an early transportation route. In addition, the Norton Historical Society mentioned a possible association with a land office of William Penn. I'll allow you, gentlemen, to again look at the rest of the report, but the bottom line is the folklore about it being a William Penn land office, which this report does not support, although it does support that it was a property that was originally owned by Adam Sam. Adam Sam, of course, was a participant in the French and Indian War, participated in the Battle of Bushy Run, and had a log house, a log house that was built in the Circleville area to protect the residents against Indian attacks. So, as you read through the report, you'll see that the chronology of Adam Sam ownership down to the current time supports the idea that the log house probably dates back to the 1840s, and this is based on the archaeological look at the construction of the log cabin. So, as I said in my objectives for you today, to have this report to mull it over, and I'm hoping that through looking at this and your discussion that some kind of positive action and direction can be taken in reference to saving this log structure. Andy, do you have the more current, there's a picture that I took today that has the front porch missing.
We got more capital on that.
So that's a more, well, that's the depiction, that's what it looks like today. And again, very important that you take a look at the document that you'll be receiving tomorrow. And the photos, I guess, will they be available for the gentleman to look at whenever?
So those are a PDF file, and we can certainly email those out if the commissioners would like them. These are all the ones that were, I don't know if that's in the report or a supplement to the report.
Those photos aren't in the report. No, this is it's just a paper.
This gives you a pretty nice view of all the sides of the structure.
Would
we can email you the pictures and the report, and I'll put the report in your mail tomorrow. The reason I didn't put it in your mail sooner was it really just came in yesterday or the day before, and I didn't want to give you a report like this the day before the meeting. We weren't going to make any decisions today. The purpose is really to, when this came up 6 weeks ago, we decided that we need to understand something about the structure, how significant it is. So that was the effort that they undertook to see what is it, the history behind it. So that's all this is to present that to you. Now, going forward, I think there's going to be an effort to try to preserve this in some manner. And I don't know what that would be, but I suggest you start thinking about what, if any, involvement the township would have. It would be nice to have a preservation group come in and take care of this, but I don't know. That's the next step, I think, to see who would be interested. There's an owner, there's a landowner there. We've had some initial discussions with him, but I think going forward, there may be a need to either have a private organization try to preserve it, or if you wanted to, we didn't have any other choice, we could perhaps participate. We haven't really studied that yet. It could be moved. That's not the best location to have something like that. You can't get in and out of there quite so easily. You may want to move it somewhere. Those are all things to be, all things to be considered going forward. Again, we don't want to decide those today, but I think what is the next step for the group? You want to try to organize some plan to preserve this?
Well, I think this is the first step tonight, just to present this to the board. Obviously, it is a historic structure based on our report and its location on Clay Pipe, which was the old pathway from Cumberland, Maryland to Pittsburgh, used by Braddock. And again, the conventional wisdom that it was a William Penn land office gave rise to maybe the immediacy of people thinking this is something important. However, transferring it to Adam Sam, who's one of our earliest local residents, I think obviously gives it as much import as if it was from William Penn himself. I know that in my reading, I think Ben Franklin signed the land approval for Adam Sam to have the property. So there's enough here that it's pretty critical as far as the history of our area, and I would like to think that we are all very much interested in preserving that.
I think if the commissioners want to comment, this would be the time. Again, we're not trying to solve this today, but I think ultimately this may come back before you in some form.
Yeah, we're open to, again, this is planting the seed tonight. We're open to a lot of ideas, the township, benefactors, groups, but again, you don't come across these things very often, and it is to a degree time sensitive. We want to make sure that we've uncovered and we've crossed every pathway we can to make sure that we try to save this. Thank you.
Our next citizen is Andrea Armbruster.
Gentlemen,
Please state your name and address.
Andrea Armbruster, 481 Mercer Drive. Okay, on my house there, I have gained a person who is interested in either buying it or leasing it. At the present time, he has several people who are interested in buying the house. What we have to do is deal with PNC, and in all probability, it will be a short sale for them. He has several people lined up to clean the house out, and he was talking about getting a dumpster in probably next week to clean it out. That's about it. I mean, he came in late on this, and he has his own company. So he was tied up for a while before we could really get going on this. So I just ask you to please be patient.
Okay, thank you. Next citizen is Amy Thompson.
Hi there.
State your name and address for the record.
Amy Johnson, 8583 Delaware Avenue. I'm here primarily just to say that I'm representing the Norwood Lacrosse Club, and we completed our first spring season of using Oak Hollow Park. It was a very successful venture with Parks and Rec and with our organization, and I'm looking forward to being able to continue our relationship. And I'm very interested in seeing what's going to be happening with the survey that North Huntington's doing and what else is going to be happening exciting in North Huntington with the Parks and Rec and what we're going to do to benefit the kids of the community. So thank you, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Okay, thank you. That's it for citizens input. Any commissioners have any comment on Carl Hussar?
I got a question for Mr. Huszar. You stated that when you read there the introduction that it dated back to 1840. Did you mean 1740?
No, the report that you'll receive tomorrow places the approximate building of the log cabin around from 1840, around the 1840 time period. But the report also will say that it goes back to the Adam Sam getting the property in the 1700s. So it was a generational thing as time went on. And they have depicted the way that the properties went from person to person, and in some cases what structures were there. So
Okay,
so look at the report, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Adam Sam wasn't the original builder of the log.
No, he was the original owner of the property.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, I would like to see us preserve this home. I think the location is, if we would move forward down the road and have tours, which we would probably do at that location, historical tours or, going through the building. The amount of parking that's available there would be a good area. I'd like to see the building moved to one of our parks. That way we can secure it in the evening and keep it locked up and do what we need to do for security reasons. Okay.
Just to quickly respond to that, in the recommendations that you're going to receive tomorrow, that's one of the recommendations that can be utilized. The caveat there is from the Christine Davis group is that if you move it, then any archaeological artifacts that might be there, of course, would be not usable or they'd be gone. However, being prudent, your suggestion and others have agreed with what you said, and I would agree with that as well, that that's probably the most, the safest way that we can keep this thing preserved and allow the community access to it to view this. So somewhere maybe in the park is something we've already discussed. That would be great if that can happen. So just so you know, my druthers are towards what you said as well.
Mr. Huszar, there is a log cabin on Daly Drive. Is there any history to that as far, I think it's gone now, or?
Well, yeah, there's some information about that, but from what I understand, that structure suffered a fire maybe 20, 30 years ago, and the roof is gone. It's it's beyond probably preservation.
Was there any history to that as far as anything like that goes?
Well, again, only from what I would speculate is that having its proximity to the Clay Pike, which was that Indian trail. It was a pathway from Cumberland to Pittsburgh, so
okay.
That's all I can tell you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, next citizen was Andrea Arburst. Okay, we'll talk about that later. Anybody have any comments for Amy Johnson?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Parks and Rec survey. I've seen a lot of comments on Facebook concerning it, And it's important for our residents to make sure they fill out the survey. This is what we're, kind of information that we're looking for with feedback, not so much comments on Facebook, but put your comments in the survey.
I think I said that to about 8
Yeah.
people.
So that's good. Just tell all your friends.
Well, I can tell you that the survey goes on through the end of the month. And I just late today got a notice that there's a lot of activity. So I haven't had a chance to look at it. We haven't looked at it, but I understand we're getting a lot of surveys and a lot of interest. And I would add that there was another comment, I think, concerning facilities and where we're going moving forward. So that's going to be coming back to the board in the near future. I hope August, but I can't say for certain. We have so many business things that we're doing right now, and that's one of them. It's an important one, but I would like to bring it back to you, something back to you in August. But there is going to be some meetings in August, going to be follow-up to the survey work, and it's going to really start to pick up some speed to be moving along in late summer. The idea being this, as well as some of the other initiatives we're doing, is to try to plan for the catch the budget cycle. And so this will be coming back to you in the near future.
Thanks, everyone. Next topic is work session discussion topics. Mr. Turley.
The first item is the Lilac Street retaining wall. As you know, we're doing a project there right now. A portion of the wall is in bad shape and needed to be repaired. There was some question, I think, as to who owned the wall and how it was built. There was some confusion, but it does hold up Lilac Street. It holds up our road, so we had to assume that it's our wall. That project is ongoing. The resident at 10385 Lilac Street had repaired her portion of the wall a year or two ago. She had met with Manager Shepard before he left several times, produced a lot of photos, and actually provided a lot of history about when the wall was built and whatnot. But anyway, she had requested, under the circumstances, she had paid a sum to repair her wall. The total amount was $7,500. And she brought this back to us because when she contacted the township, she had indicated she'd been told that it was not the township's wall. Talking with Manager Shepard, we felt that since it does hold up our road, that this is our wall, and that she had requested reimbursement in that amount, and we agreed to bring that back to the commissioners for consideration to reimburse the resident at 10385 Lilac Street in the amount of $7,500 for her repair of her portion of the retaining wall that holds up Lilac Street.
Any questions on?
Yeah, unless I'm missing something. Was that Mrs. Schiff? Is that correct? Yes. All right, I see $6,250.
Yeah, that, I had sent you a memo, Claire. I had
sent you a memo clarifying that. That was there was actually a side wall too, and the correct amount is $7,500. When she initially gave that to John, it didn't include all of her expenses. Correct amount is $7,500.
Any questions, concerns?
So I'll bring that back next week for a vote and action.
Yeah. Bring it back next week, regular Wednesday's meeting.
The next item is an issue that was follow-up from last month's work session. It's a problem on Edgewood Court, a newer development that has an off-site stormwater runoff problem. You might recall the discussion. It actually drains a fairly large area, drains to there. I think it's at least 8 acres there. Annie has 8.5 acres there. That development is older up above. The township does have a couple of storm inlets on 2 of the streets that we own. We contribute to the problem. It's relatively small compared to the total 8 acres that contributes to the problem, but we do contribute. When we went out and looked at it, both Bob Robinson, Andy Blanco, and myself has spent some time on this. And our inlets really aren't concentrating the water all that much. But nonetheless, our roads there are contributing to this. It's a pretty significant problem. We looked at this. You can see Andy showing there's a paper right away, right behind the newer homes that are having the problem. And we felt as though, as we discussed last week, that we would bring a concept back to you. And the concept is something that we were familiar with, a project like was done at Fundistown a few years ago, which is sort of a collection trench. And then you would collect the water and take it down to Edgewood, to our facilities on Edgewood. How this happened, it's not good, predates all of us. How or why it happened, we can't say. The developer is bankrupt. There's no real chance to go back on him. I mean, this was looks like a faulty design of the site. I don't think that you have any responsibility that you have to do this, but we also don't believe this is something that the individual property owners are going to be able to solve either. It's a little too significant. So what we're bringing back to you is a concept with a rough cost. It hasn't been designed yet. Obviously, we're waiting to see what you wanted to do moving forward and to see if this was acceptable. But the cost we estimate would roughly be about $45,000, not including engineering and surveying and some easement work. So we definitely feel like we'll be north of $40,000, maybe in the vicinity of $50,000. And this was very similar to the cost of what was done up at Fundistown a few years ago too. We feel as though this is solvable if you're willing to move forward with this. We will need the cooperation of some of the property owners. If you see the red lines there, you'll see the line in the paper right away that is the collection ditch. And the red line, I don't remember the address there. The red line would be a pipe system down to Edgewood Court. We would need a cooperation of that for easements. And the one question that came up had to do with the use of the paper right away. And this is far longer than a period of time that we would have any right to use that right away. But having some discussions with the solicitor, they believe that the residents that live on Edgewood Court have a right to use half of that right away to the center line. That's approximately a 40-foot paper right away, so they would be entitled to use 20 feet of that. And we believe that we could work within that area and create the ditch to collect the water and then transfer it down to Edgewood Court. That's basically the project. That's the cost. We will need cooperation from some of the residents, and that's open for your comment or discussion.
Andy, on that picture you got right there, that is an older satellite image. Is there not a home right next to where you're looking to bring the water down to Edgewood Court now?
That is correct. That is a 2014 aerial photo. Here's a more current one. There's actually even yet another home that's almost finished. I guess they're living in it, which is here. So this is an empty lot. This is a double lot. There is one more home since this photo was taken. This photo was sometime last year.
Yeah, Andy, the other problem is coming off of Jack Drive, correct? Coming down here where the new home is?
This is the newer home here, I believe. It is, I walk a fine line here. There's 3 storm sewers that contribute to this watershed. None of them are more than a short length of pipe, and you can see this one is a single inlet, this one is a single inlet, this one is 2 inlets. My guess is, although I don't know the history of those, I see Rich Albert is here and he may, but I think they were put in because they were getting washouts and a lot of water into people's driveways at the end of the road. If those inlets and storm pipes weren't there, the water would still be coming to the bottom of the hill. It's not a massive storm sewer system. It's not something that's taking water from another watershed and introducing it into this watershed. The water would get there anyhow. But we've gone back and looked at the original stormwater management report for this plan. I don't know what the developer was thinking. He didn't include any of that area in his calculations, either by way of conveyance or how many inlets should be on the street, and it wasn't picked up in the review. This is back in 2003, I believe, that plan was approved. So, as Mike said, it is extremely similar to Fundustown. There are streets up above it. They are discharging, coming down over the hill into these people's yards. Here is a photo taken just after it had stopped raining. You can see how much water is coming down there. It's an awful lot of water, and it's a difficult problem for those homeowners to fix themselves because it involves 4 or 5 different properties. I think the question is, do we feel it's our obligation to try and pick up that water and convey it through there? 8.5 acres generates a lot of runoff. Fortunately, a lot of that is wooded, but not all of it.
I have a question. Considering if this is approved, are we going to be able to manage that scope of work in this year?
I looked to see if we had the money to do this, and we can do this as far as the budget. But this isn't the most complicated project, but it has a few elements to it. We need some design plans, we need some survey work, it also be coordinated and scheduled. The water quantities have to be calculated so the ditch can be designed. There's slope, all of that has to be done. So it's not going to happen in a few weeks. And we have so many other things that are priorities too. We have to decide how we're going to fit this in with what we're doing. We're doing our 5-year road planning right now and some other significant things that are tying up our engineering staff. But like I said, I think we can work this in. We haven't thought it through completely, but I think that we could work this in through the late summer and fall, and then we, depending on the cost, we have to prepare some specifications and whatnot, and then have a contractor get him on board and coordinate it. I think we can do it this year.
Okay.
But it's just there's just so many things going on right now, and the staff has been so taxed. I guess it's a question of where does this prioritize with some other things. I think it's something that we would like to do, and I think we would like to do it this year if you agree to it. We have, we have some tasking. What I would suggest first is to talk to the property owner. I don't know the address there where it's showing vacant now, but there's a house, and we have to get the cooperation of them. If we don't get the cooperation from the residents, then I would just suggest dropping the project, because it's just going to be too time consuming, too difficult. So before we even paid for surveying and engineering, that would be my suggestion, is to talk to them, make sure that they're going to be agreeable to this and cooperate, and then go ahead. We would do surveying and engineering over the next month or so, I would think.
Okay. Good.
I think it's fair to say that it's either all of the properties or none of them, because you can't get that continuous run along the back.
All of them.
I agree.
I don't think they'd be against not getting water.
You never know.
I have a question. It seems like with this storms that we've been having and everything, we're getting bombarded. I know I'm getting tons of calls about water problems on properties and that. I'm getting calls from over on Forest Drive, Overholt. Some of them, like one on Overholt, is probably pretty much the same problem. How many projects like this in the township would we be looking at having to do if we do this one?
This is the problem. This is a potential problem.
This
is not of their doing. This is not of their doing, and they just, move in, and all of a sudden they have a significant problem. Not that the others are. They're all a little different. All of these, some of the, we've had I think it's the fourth wettest spring on record.
Right.
So we're just getting beat up every couple of days over these issues. Curbing. There's
Getting it down here at
there's
Brown's
probably
County.
hundreds of these, and we can't even work on these right now because of the road program. So, we're angering lots of people, I can assure you of that, because we have to do these later in the year. We don't have any other option. But you answer your question is how many more of these could we do? We've done a few, and there could be more. You know, in the past, we've tried to look at this from a cost-benefit standpoint and evaluate these individually. Like at Fundus Town, the work we did down at Lions Park, we have done a number of these, and they had pretty good cost-benefit numbers, and we went ahead and did them because they helped a lot of people. So I don't think that we can look at these like everyone that comes in, we're going to be able to help. So you're going to have to look at these on an individual basis. And this is one that has some similarity to something that we did at Fundus Town. And a similar cost. That's where we got the concept from. Right away when we went out there, we could visualize what the concept would be, the design concept. And so if you decide not to do it for that reason, I think a lot of communities would do that they just can't. So it's just a never-ending problem. Stormwater is just never-ending because somebody always lives downstream. So that's the answer I would give you. I think that we have done some of these. This is one, like I said, they're not going to solve this too easily. It's a pretty big problem. It's not of their doing. I think we can we've done some similar projects like this. But I think you're going to have to decide what your position is on whether you want to potentially, while you're telling one group of people you're going to do a project and others you can't do.
Right.
And we did the stuff at the townhouse here. We did the facility at the townhouse to help the folks down below us. And they're still having problems down there because those problems are more than what the township can do. They involve private property, they involve a state road, they involve other things. But we did a project here to try to help them. We did the one at Lions Park that I mentioned at Fundus Town. So,
Andy, how many property owners are affected by this? It looks like the pipe crosses for the 7 properties.
6, possibly 7. I'm not sure of the house on the right, how much they're impacted by it. But I know all of the other ones are.
So they're most likely going to be all in on cooperating if the township's going to pay for it and do it, right? I mean,
I can't imagine why they wouldn't want to.
right. I guess my question is, are they going to contribute anything to this because it benefits them? Or, I mean, I understand it wasn't their doing, it wasn't. We had a similar situation down in Jacktown Acres that wasn't their doing. It was a problem also like this, but
well,
the township made them contribute to the project.
Well, that was a little bit different because it was their pipe. It was a private pipe that they actually owned, and we don't want to. I would not recommend start replacing private pipes. I saw that as a little different. This is a Fundus Town. We didn't ask them to contribute because it was a lot of water coming from our streets. I mean, we're contributing to this.
Right. And what percentage are we contributing? As much as Fundus Town?
This came up last month, really. We're just bringing the concept to you. We didn't really delve really deeply like that into it, but we're contributing.
We contribute to everything.
Yeah, because we own roads, right?
Yeah.
We
contribute to Lincoln Way, and I met with somebody a couple of weeks ago down there that wants the stream dredged. You know, I mean, I understand we have to pick and choose these, but I think we should have some kind of criteria for it too. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do this. What I'm saying is, are we going to come up with some kind of criteria whereby we judge these all the same?
Like I said, in the past, we looked at cost benefit. We looked at whether we thought the problem was solvable, that we contributed to it. The private pipe matter, that's almost a non-starter for us. We're not going on property replacing pipe that was put in. That's just, we can't, I would not start that. Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I see this similar to Fundus Town, but that's a decision that's going to be for you to make if you want to move ahead with this. Like I said, this is really just a few weeks in the works. We didn't really talk to the property owners in terms of anything like that. We just were trying to come up with a concept. We wanted the big issue was really the paper right away and whether we could get in there, how we could get in there and use it, because the thing just falls apart without that. We don't have but we would have to go to all these, everybody in that plant up there and get their permission to use that. Right away, we couldn't do it, but we have an answer there. And I thought once we have a project that I think we can develop. This question is, do you want to spend money to develop it? So we have not considered anybody else contributing or We did on, like you said, at Jacktown, but that was a 4-foot diameter private pipe that was an $80,000 project or more perhaps. I don't remember the exact number, so that just wasn't gonna get done without us helping. There just wasn't gonna get done. It was a big problem. In fact, that was one we probably wouldn't have been involved with, except it was such a big problem. There was no way to solve it without putting together some sort of cooperative plan that they paid and we contributed to. So
Right, well, that one, the people were experiencing home flooding, structure damage. Or is that happening up here also? Or is this just wet backyards?
well, I don't know the answer to that, but this is a pretty big problem. It is in the picture. There's a lot of water coming down through there. They may have designed their homes, or they have it's sloped property away from the house, and the water is getting to the house, but it's still a lot of water on their property. I would assume since they're new, Andy, you've been out there, it seems like the water collects in the back of their yards and it finds a good place to get through it, but then eventually makes its way onto Edgewood Court.
I don't think anybody's getting water actually into their dwellings, but I'm sure there's damp basements. There's certainly yard erosion. You can see some pretty severe ditches through the yards. And I would think come winter, we're gonna run the risk of icing and ice buildup on the street.
Well, we didn't like the idea, if they individually tried to collect this and take this down, we're gonna have to deal with the water when it gets down to Edgewood Court too. So we're gonna be involved somehow along the way.
It's always better for us to jump in and try and do a proactive solution than deal with cleaning up a bunch of, if everybody tries to do their own thing and brings pipes down to the road, we'll still end up having to put in storm sewers to fix it, but now we're doing it after the fact instead of trying to engineer a solution. The thing that makes this project nice is the topography all funnels the water to that paper alley, and there's no need to acquire any property. We're not going in there and buying out a lot or something to do the project.
All right, so basically, what you're looking at is cutting a ditch the whole way up that paper alley, and then having a drain somewhere in the middle.
An overflow structure that would then drain down through a storm pipe through one of the yards.
Okay, if I remember right, over on Dartmoor, where the property all backs McCannon Road, and that was done some years ago for those houses that come down over the hill, and I believe there's a ditch there.
There is.
Who's responsible for the upkeep of that ditch?
That will eventually be ours. It hasn't been turned over yet by Noranda because they're not done with construction.
Because I know there were some questions about that, and it's been filled in with vegetation and clogged up, and some of the people there are having some problems.
Oh, yeah. There are 2 detention ponds in Dartmoor Estates, which eventually will be turned over to us.
We're responsible for all the detention ponds, right, Andy?
Correct.
No, this isn't a detention pond, it's a,
Everybody's gonna be.
it's the base of the hills, and it's like this, where it's a ditch dug across, and there's stone and that put in it so that the water flows through the ditch.
Dartmoor or Kerber Farms?
Well, actually, it would be probably up at Kerber Farms,
Okay.
down over the hill,
Yes.
down to McCannon.
Yes.
One of the properties is the Alford property there, and the old O'Brien property and that. I believe they're both having some problems with that ditch that was put in by a developer. It was,
Yes. Yes.
you're saying we'll eventually take that over?
I don't believe that ditch it's a right of way, it's a drainage easement, but it's not something that's going to be conveyed to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this would be our responsibility to keep clean.
I'm not sure with moving forward with it.
Yeah, when I have some of those ditches in Markview Manor, behind some houses over in East and everything. And we've had problems down there, but now they learned that they have to take care of that, not put stuff in it, to get the water away from the
Oh,
house.
sure, and the more that we get developments, the more we're gonna have this with cement driveways and vegetation being taken away and no trees. And I have one across the whole top of my property that I personally put in, because I was having a water problem, so I took care of it, and I dug a ditch across there. All right.
I guess I just ultimately have a problem spending taxpayers' dollars for improvement of the personal property owners. I mean, I know it wasn't their fault by doing so. Ultimately, the developer, as you said, went bankrupt, and who knows if the developer would have even done this project, something of this nature, even if he, didn't go bankrupt. It just gets in a gray area that you're going to do for some and not for others. I think Dwayne said, it's kind of just going down a slippery slope. You're kind of picking and choosing. I know, and I totally agree. The project looks like it's cut and dry and pretty easy to do. And just we got to be careful of picking and choosing that one property owner is more important than a different one. Okay, moving forward with it.
Yeah, I think,
Well, is that what you want to do? Or do you, what we're looking is the direction if you want us to move ahead and start doing survey work and discuss the easement and some of those activities.
I think you need to start talking about the easements and stuff like that, but maybe somebody just won't give it to you.
Yeah, but we weren't going to spend any money on this until you wanted to. I'm not clear if we have a consensus to move ahead based on some of the comments. But if we do, then the thing would be to talk to the one property owner in particular and then start doing some survey and engineering work. So
I'm okay with moving ahead.
I think you need to talk to the property owners first and find out what their thoughts are. They're gonna give us the access to do what we need to do.
I don't see any reason to move ahead until you do talk to the property owners, and I agree with Rich that we should come up with some type of rules and regulations, or whatever you
well,
want to call it.
we sort of, as I alluded to, we sort of unofficially did that in past years. We looked at cost benefit, we looked at whether we could do the project. Things don't fall neatly into a yes or no box, unfortunately. You ultimately got to make a decision. This is similar to one that we have done, which struck me as one, and it's a solution. It's not really expensive, but it's not inexpensive either. It has a cost to it. It's far less than what we did at Lions Park, but that had a benefit to a lot more people too. So the Corps of Engineers developed these cost-benefit numbers because they, over many years, have done projects that are very, very costly, and they look at the flooding damages and the benefits and then they've done. We adopted that, but that doesn't always work well for us because some of our this is very isolated. So I'm not sure how. I mean, we sort of doing what you're saying, but we can't always put something into a yes or no box too easily.
How did this matter come to us? I mean, did residents come to the meeting, or I just remember one of the criteria at one time when I talked to John about it was structural damage, getting water into the house. And I think he phrased it actually about nobody cares about wet backyards. We can't address every backyard with water in it.
We applied that more to a larger project like Lions Park. It was designed with a cost and a pretty major project in the hundreds of thousands of dollars because you had to gain those benefits over time. This is smaller. It's smaller. And I can't say that if you spend $40,000 or $45,000 that you're going to prevent that much in monetary damages to these properties because you calculate damage within the structure, and this is a lot of property external yard damage. So, but we've done some of these too because it's still a significant amount of water and it's still a pretty significant problem. And we felt as though sooner or later we have to deal with this. We're going to have residents bringing their own private drainage systems down to Edgewood Court, and we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to deal with it somehow. Get it.
Maybe that would be cheaper. You've said a couple times about it's a significant amount of water. I don't think the water, people have rivers that run behind their house, that's a significant amount of water, but I think we need to look at the significant damage or the significant improvement it will make to some damage when we don't gauge it by the gallons of water going by, we should gauge it by the damage being done or the impact that the water has. It's just something to think about.
I'd be fine with moving ahead as far as seeing if you can get the property owner's approval on that, and also if you get some kind of a hold harmless agreement, you know, to any damage done to their property, if we have to take fences down, that's gonna be their expense, you know.
I agree.
Well, I'm not sure I'm clear. We're gonna talk to the property and then come back to you? Let's come back to you. Okay, okay. See, okay, okay. Okay, next item is, you might recall, actually we discussed a little earlier about the parks, some of the master planning work, comp planning that we decided to do through our strategic planning for Parks and Recreation. About a year or more ago, there was some discussion about specific questions about Markview Manor. So this was one that we had to answer regardless of where we end up with the broader parks work that we're doing. So anyway, we worked on this over the last few months or so, and our landscape architect, Rich Rosso, is here today. He was going to discuss some of the issues with Markview Manor, and I just want to introduce him and have him come up and do the presentation. But I want to just mention a couple of things. He's probably going to get into this, but it's in a lot of ways, it's less than an ideal piece of ground. The topography and so forth, it creates a lot of issues, including cost, to try to make something happen. I think that he's been very creative in trying to develop what we would call a neighborhood park. There's also some issues of access. So there's a couple of fairly significant issues with this, but nonetheless, there's a plan, and going forward, we can discuss after his presentation if you want. You can move ahead with this plan if you like it. It's not inexpensive. We could look at doing a phased plan. We could look at trying to get some money to help with this. Ultimately, whatever is decided, I think this will have to be prioritized alongside of whatever other parks and recreational facilities we're going to do. So maybe it's a situation where you want to do something here, but it's not a priority right now. It might be a few years down the road. It might be a scaled-down version of what he's developed. Because we asked him to just look at the property and try to develop a site plan that made sense for a neighborhood park. So that's where we're at. Rich, if you would come up and.
Thanks, Mike. There'll be some digital images. I also have a board that I brought, master plan. I have some handouts for everybody, so hopefully between all that, I could explain what's going on. And like you said, we'd like to get your input tonight. Any questions, comments?
You said you did a feature. You said you did a feature.
That must have been my dad.
No.
I hope they guys.
Okay.
Could you state your name and address?
Yes, my name is Richard Rosso, R-A-U-S-O. I'm a landscape architect. My address is 267 Saunders Station Road in Trafford, Pennsylvania, but that's actually level 3. So, thanks for inviting me tonight. Just a little background information for you, and some of you may not know this or not, but
Richard, would you like me to get your concept plan and put it on?
Yeah, if you could, that would be great too. While Andy's doing that, I don't need that right away. I'll give you some background information on some things before we broke the images. And I also brought the board too, so everybody can kind of look at everything. But as far as I understand, in 2004, the township acquired the property from Markview Manor neighborhood park. It's about 6.5 acres. It's heavily wooded, although in the middle of it, there's an old ball field that was there. So with 6.5 acres, if you count the amount of approximately developable or flat land on that piece of property, it's only about 1.33 acres. So you can see most of the area is very steeply sloped. There's also, if you walk down in there, there's an old picnic pavilion that's down in there. And then also an old ball field with a little bit with the remnants of an old backstop. And there's a paved basketball court in there that's in a state of sort of disrepair. The bituminous paving is rough and uneven. And there's also an old asphalt path that goes down from the access point down to the basketball court and actually continues down a little bit farther than that. So that's sort of the existing conditions that are out there now. But our goal, and as Mike has said, is really to sort of come up with a master plan or a feasibility study for the cost for the redevelopment of Markview Manor Neighborhood Park. So a little bit more background information too. As far as NRPA guidelines, and NRPA stands for National Recreation and Parks Association. Their guidelines, if you go to what they say, is that within about a half-a mile radius of the park itself, there could be approximately between 1,000 and 2,500 residents. Sort of, that's the guidelines for what would support a neighborhood park. And if you sort of count that radius, and the reason why they say a half a mile is because essentially a half a mile is a walkable neighborhood park. You know, it's not a park that's going to require parking or people would drive to or anything like that. But a half a mile radius is sort of a normal radius within reason that people could walk there. So, so if you count here as far as Markview Manor, there is about 950 or so homes, and there's about approximately 2,500 residents that would be within that half-mile radius. So if you look at the NRPA guidelines, this does sort of qualify as, quote, a neighborhood park. So, so as far as that's concerned, you know, it qualifies in both in the needs and the size of the neighborhood park. So probably, while he's pulling that up, you could refer to it as a board here also. And as you see, the green sort of long rectangular area is Markview Manor. And one of the things that you see that green area, one of the things that I also wanted to alert you to is you see a small sliver of green, and that's off of Cornwall Drive in the Willow development. And that's a piece of open space that's located within that development. I think it's critical that within that sort of half-mile radius of that neighborhood park that we can potentially provide access to the neighborhood park from that new development. There's lots of new homes and new families there also. So you can see there is a gap between there. So I think one of the things that might be considered is to provide some sort of an easement or some sort of access. If the park is going to be developed, it would be great to provide a walking access. It wouldn't be vehicular necessarily, but it would be a walkable access to the park from that new development. Okay. So let's, I'll flip this over, and it's also the digital part too.
Can you show us an actual picture with all the homes in it that are existing now?
And if you have my presentation, the whole thing, I think I do, that might be included in there too. That one? That's a little bit farther back. Yeah, that's a zoomed back image. I don't know if that helps or not. That's a Google Earth image there. That's sort of zoomed in. Does that one help, or is the one before that?
How old is that?
Well, that's taken from Google Earth, but it's probably from the past 3 to 4 years. But you can see the development, the Willow development at the bottom, you can see it's just roughed in. So timeline-wise, that sort of gives you a little bit of a milestone. Okay. So the master plan that we came up with really sort of follows, and let me backtrack a little bit further. In 2004, when the property, I guess, was acquired, there was a survey that was sent out to 777 local residents, of which 304 residents or number of the surveys were returned. So it's almost 40% response. So if you know anything about surveys, 40% response rate is a pretty darn good response rate. But one of the things back then, so that was 13 years ago, but one of the things in that survey is they asked the people that the survey was sent to what their top 5 activities would potentially be in this park. And the number one thing that the people asked for back in 2004 was a walking and biking trail. Okay, that was the first thing. The second thing was a playground. The third was a picnic pavilion area. And then tied for 4th and 5th was a baseball field or basketball court and a sled riding hill and any child or senior programs that would be located there in the park. So you can see, and then it's sort of, I guess it's not surprising if you look back to the NRPA guidelines for a neighborhood park, those are sort of the same things that people ask for all over the country. So this isn't something, you know, what the local residents asked for wasn't something that was over and above or a big surprise from what the national standards are. So, and then because of that, surprise, surprise, I mean, those are some of the things that we wanted, that we included in the master plan. And just to sort of give you some sort of touch on the main elements of the park itself. The first thing coming in is there's an existing asphalt walk that goes down there. That walk is in some places it's steeper than 5%, in other places it's around 5%. The reason why I say 5% is that's sort of the tipping point. That's the steepest slope you can have if you want a path to be handicap accessible. So if we're going to ask for funding from the state of Pennsylvania through DCNR through their Growing Greener plan, they're going to want to see an accessible park. That every feature within the park that we develop would be handicap accessible. So it's critical then that path be 5%. So it doesn't. In some places it's a little bit steeper, but essentially there would be some grading in that area. But most of the path is around 5%. So that path would need to be regraded, obviously, and then repaved. So as you sort of come into the park itself, you know, there would be a picnic pavilion, a small playground area, and then you would have a set of concrete stairs that would come down in between the playground area and the picnic pavilion that would provide sort of quick access down to those features. But that obviously would not be handicap accessible. But then you wrap your way down and around, and you see into the picnic or into the playground area. That would be 5%, and that would be handicap accessible. So you would have that sort of playground area. So what we were figuring is the sort of the main or sort of most developed area of the park, so to speak, or the most highly used would be the playground and picnic pavilion. As we sort of put it as physically close to the main entrance as we could based on the topography. So as you continue down that accessible path, what we figured we would do is repave that basketball court. Again, that was one of the things that was asked for way back when in the survey. That basketball court could potentially be repaved and rehab. There'd be a basketball court there. And then right before you got to the basketball court, one of the things that we thought, since there is a sloping topography, one of the things that might be kind of cool to have is the hillside slide. And I thought that would be a great idea for the kids to slide down and really give them a quick access down toward sort of the potential open space area. That hillside slide requires safety surfacing in the top and the bottom, but the hillside slide, since it is flush with the ground, it's made out of plastic, it would not require any sort of safety surfacing on the sides, just top and bottom. And then you would have a path coming down from that, the kids then could walk up and down and utilize that hillside slide. As you go back past the basketball court, you see sort of a hairpin turn. We had to put that path in there at 5%, and that'd get you down to sort of the old ball field area. And that would be just sort of an open lawn area that if you wanted to throw a frisbee or throw a football or catch a baseball with your kids, you would have that sort of open lawn area. It wouldn't really be structured for with a backstop or anything like that for any organized, ball teams. But if you did want to go down there and utilize whatever you wanted to do down there, you'd have a nice open lawn area there. And then you also see sort of a loop trail around there too. So that would be potentially paid. Kids could ride their bikes on it. Moms could push the strollers. You have some open space there. We would have some nice planting around that. Maybe some flowering trees and maybe some beds that would have some native type meadow planting in it, and then also provides some seating down there. That's sitting areas, I guess, not seating, lawn seating, but sitting. So there'd be some bench seating areas there. And then potentially you see on the right-hand side there would be a connection. I don't have it shown, but there would be a connection to the Willow development. So that's essentially what the main features are that we have in the park. And then if you go to the back page, what we've done is sort of a master plan level cost estimate for the park. And again, this was just our first pass at it. This wasn't really trying to save any money. This was some of the features we thought would be available in the park. And so if you count the site improvements, the new walking path, basketball court, some play structures, obviously within the playground area, the hillside slide, a picnic pavilion, the concrete stairs, basketball court, and benches, site furniture, benches, trash receptacles, some grading and some trees. And then there's also be some costs for site demolition, and then miscellaneous costs for construction, stakeout, erosion control, and design fees. We come up with a total, you see at the bottom, about $366,000. One of the potential things that you could do, and I talked again at the beginning of my presentation, is there is the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, DCNR. There is their Growing Greener grant program, which is a 50-50 match. So that could be a potential funding source. That would be, so the match would either have to be in cash or in-kind services. So if it was cash only, you'd take half of that, which is about $183,000 if I do the math correctly. That would have to be supplied by the township as far as cash or in-kind services. So that's sort of quickly where we are. So I welcome any questions, comments, thoughts, before we proceed.
Rich, question: Where's all these people going to park?
Well, that's a really good question. One of the things that there was never any parking there at the park when it was developed way back when, and sort of as the definition of a neighborhood park is that it is a walk-in park. So we really wouldn't provide any parking at all. The people would walk to the park, as we would anticipate. The one thing that you would have to do probably is you would have to provide a handicap space or two, accessible handicap, so people with disabilities would be able to park close to the entrance. But outside of that, we don't show, and there really is no room physically. I mean, unless we totally change our master plan and provide driving down into the park, which would take a major portion of that park, the developable area away for parking. We're not, at this point in time, we don't provide any parking at all, since it's defined sort of as a neighborhood park.
So all them people will be parking on the road in front of all these people's houses. I don't know
That,
how that's going to go.
yeah.
We already had that problem up in Country Hills and with the park up there. You said you'd have to provide a handicap parking space. You've been over the area up there?
Yes, I have.
Where would you suggest we
Probably have to do that on street, provide an on-street parking space. You strike it off and sign it right at the entrance.
Which we have houses right there.
Yep, exactly. I mean, in other parks we've done in other municipalities, that's not something that's not atypical situation, where you do have a neighborhood park that doesn't provide any neighborhood parking, but yet you do provide an on-site or on-street parking space.
And you're going to have I know like in my neighborhood, we have Campbell's Court, and that's owned by the Civic Association, and that's kept up by the Civic Association and everything. And when the kids have other friends come over, they aren't within walking distance,
Right.
they drive.
Right,
You know, so
that's the reality.
parking's gonna be a problem. Restroom facilities are gonna be a problem, although you were saying it could be done in the future, but.
I did not include that in the master plan, because that would be a significant cost.
Sure.
To provide.
Sure, you'd have to probably have some kind of pumping station and
Exactly.
everything there.
Exactly, because you're down in the hole there.
Limited visibility of park amenities for law enforcement. Here again, history, we always had problems with the drinking down there. Pavilion was set on fire at one time. You know, that was a problem area. It was almost a haven for drinking and drugs and stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions, Jim?
I guess I really enjoy your plan here. Maybe just in more of your expertise, do you see some of the communities you work with going more to centralized parks than neighborhood parks? It seems like a lot of the neighborhood parks are more of a dated design where, like Dwayne was saying, the civics associations maybe upkept them, and it was more of a neighborhood park where the neighborhood ran a park.
Yeah. Well, I think there is still sort of that hierarchy of parks, and it is sort of useful because whenever the next step up in park design is a community park, and that's obviously a drive-through park. And those parks usually have some sort of organized fields, baseball, soccer, football, whatever. So that's more a sort of a destination park that you look on your calendar and you say, hey, we have a baseball game Tuesday night at 7:30. We're going to that's at the community park. The neighborhood parks still sort of function as that sort of impromptu kind of thing, like, hey, we have an hour, let's go to the park, you know, or we have some free time, let's go to the neighborhood park. So that's sort of what the neighborhood parks still function as, is sort of that impromptu, unorganized, hey, we have some free time, let's just go. Although, you know, everybody's free time, kids and organized sports and free time is a little bit less, but that's sort of the gist of how a neighborhood park, why it is.
I look at a neighborhood park like Hilltop. That's a nice walk-to park.
Right.
There's a lot of trails going through homes and backyards to make it to the park. I think for this park to be successful, it needs to have a field, a usable field,
okay,
for either soccer or lacrosse, or I would imagine lacrosse is the biggest field that football. It needs parking, needs accessibility, not only for maintenance, for the residents, and for security.
There's only about 1 1/3 acres that's developable down in that flat sort of former baseball field, which is about the size of a small Little League field. So that's about, without incurring any large-scale grading and really, making a huge impact to that park. That's about, if you can imagine a Little League field, that's about the size you do. So you could put a small, like, U6, U8 soccer field in that same thing, but, much past that, without it, doing any major grading and major reshaping of that property, that's about all you can sort of fit, within a reasonable budget, yeah.
Yeah, I see that park does need a lot of rehabilitation. I would also like to see, if we do the basketball court, it should be a dual-use court. It should be deck hockey, surrounded by a fence to allow it to be able to use
That's
for
a
deck
popular
hockey.
use too, yeah.
And basketball. If we're going to build amenities, we have to make sure that they serve as many purposes as absolutely possible. It's nice to have a wide open field, but if somebody's not playing in it, and we have walking to a park, which I think this could very well be a destination park, especially on that side of North Huntington Township. It's a far way to Indian Lake and Ocala, so I think that has great potential, that park.
Right. I think one of the things that you guys mentioned too that is very valid too is there is no parking shown there. I mean, and obviously whenever you get into parking and paving areas, and we have to deal with stormwater too, so this is like you were talking before about your stormwater issues. So that's sort of you know, increases the cost to that. So that's something we'd have to think about too. The sort of, as the uses increase, the cost increases too. Sort of the organized uses, I guess you would say, yeah. The parking, stormwater, so on and so forth, yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Rich, would it be possible to cut a road in off of that existing road there?
Yes,
In or,
You mean from the Willow development?
no, the other way, going the other way?
From Hetty Lane? There is a paved, it's not a road, but I mean.
I know, yeah, I know where, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about, you know, straight off of 80 Lane or somewhere.
It's only one lane.
It'll go
Yeah.
right down.
Yeah,
Straight down.
Straight down.
yeah.
The other way into the park right now is to the left. I used to drive down there all the time in the truck.
And that's one of the things that I sort of struggled with in doing the design was, you know, where do you stop the cars? Do we take cars down into the park? Do we, you know, take them down that paved road and introduce them into the park itself? You know, then all of a sudden you look at the traffic issue and having cars in the park itself and the conflict obviously between, you know, people using the park and the cars themselves. So that was one of the things that I considered whenever I was doing this design was, yeah, where do you stop the cars? You know, obviously, if we design that, I mean, you wouldn't have to design obviously to the same specs as the township road, obviously, but one of the things that you would have to consider, and one of the things that we did do is we made it 8 foot wide, so if you did have to get an emergency vehicle down there, if there was an issue down in the park where somebody was hurt, that path is 8 feet wide, so you can get an emergency vehicle down into the park itself. But it wouldn't be, you know, accessible for normal traffic.
Does that road down have any possibility of being widened? I know on the right it's pretty much a drop off. How about on the left?
You mean on Hetty Lane?
Yeah.
Potentially it could be widened a little bit, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is a 50-foot right-of-way through there.
Because in your design, I see the road going down. If the road was widened, it came down and followed in between the playground and the basketball court would be your parking area. And then another road that would just go up. Okay? In other words, when you go down, that would only be on the far side, on the northern side, would only be a down lane.
Right, so we
The other
would have
lane
to
would make
provide,
it only up lane.
yeah. So we would have to provide, I mean, if we improve that road, yeah, you'd have to have, it would be a minimum, say, 16 feet wide to safely pass 2 cars.
I also want to ask you, do you consider any BMX bike trails through the wooded area at all?
That's a potential use too. I mean, that would certainly attract users there. We don't have it shown, but there certainly could be, you know, dirt or mulch paths that could be cut in the park area that are used for walking trails or BMX or that sort of thing. Certainly, yeah, sort of informal, you know, organized trails, but not paved. Yeah.
I love how you incorporated the slide.
Yeah, I think that's pretty.
That's cool. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Not right now.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is planning and engineering conflicts. Mr. Blanken.
Okay, first item we've already touched on a little bit tonight is the home at 41 Mercer Drive. This home has been declared uninhabitable. It was boarded up, I believe, late last summer, early last fall. And we have a lot of complaints from the neighbors. There were rodents inside and outside. Bob Zunit of Bruce Dice's office attempted to make contact with the property owner, and I believe PNC Bank was a mortgage holder on the dwelling last fall. He finally, in December or January, said, I'm out of options. The lines of communication have gone dark with Jerome Tierney, who was the attorney representing Mrs. Armbrust. He never heard anything back from PNC Bank. So he said, based on that, I think you're okay to go ahead with demolition. Just do everything you can to give notice to all involved parties. The problem we had was that we had no idea how to reach Mrs. Armbrust. She attended the April Board of Commissioners meeting and said that she was very upset that we would not allow her contractor in to clean out the home. I was stunned to see her because I had no idea what she looked like, how to reach her, and I said, please talk to me after the meeting, let's get contact information and we'll get in touch with each other. So she did provide me with a name and a phone number and her address where she was living, and we had a very nice conversation at the end of April, and she agreed that she could get the house cleaned out in 60 days. I'm going to say, and we documented that in a letter, which was sent, I believe, May 5th, giving her July 4th as a deadline. About a month into that, we did have a site meeting out there with 2 contractors to do clean out work. I don't know if bids were rendered to Mrs. Armbrust, but I did speak with one of the contractors. He said the cost to do it was more like $15,000 to $20,000 versus her budget was more like $1,000 to $2,000. They were miles apart and weren't going to be able to meet in the middle on price. I don't know if the other contractor gave her a bid or not. But we did send Mrs. Armbrust a letter on June 22nd. I said, this letter is a reminder that you have a deadline of July 4th, 2017 to have your home at 41 Mercer Drive cleaned out in accordance with our discussion on May 5th and follow-up letter. If the dwelling is not cleaned out by that date, it will be my recommendation at the next Board of Commissioners meeting for the township to demolish the building. Josh Andrukhovich and my staff has tried to reach you by phone without success to let you know that there is an investor who may be interested in purchasing and rehabbing your dwelling. And we provided his name and number. So in the last 2 days, Josh did have contact with a woman by the name of Jill McGuire, who stated that she is an agent, a title agent, who will be overseeing the purchase of the home. There is a licensed contractor who would like to buy it and have the schedule cleaned out, exterminated, and fumigated beginning in the very near future. I'm aware this property is up for demolition, however, it can be saved. That is such a nice neighborhood. Let's see if we can't bring it back to life, and let me get this hazard off your desk. Thanks in advance, Jill McGuire. I can tell you from a planning standpoint that a vacant lot isn't a good thing in a neighborhood. However, I can also tell you that that home is not a good thing in the neighborhood. We don't have a bid in hand to demolish the home, and we won't until next month. There were some irregularities in the bidding. We need to get new quotes from interested parties. So we are not in a position to award a bid to demolish the home until next month's meeting, roughly a month from now. That being the case, the house is going to sit there for a month. I don't want to keep drawing lines in the sand, but if we can't do anything until that time anyhow, I'm not adverse to giving another 30 days to Mrs. Armbrust or the buyer to have the house cleaned out. We're in the heat of summer, it's going to get hotter, it's going to get smelly. We've already had complaints from neighbors about that with open windows in the house. But let's be honest, if we can't do anything about it for a month anyhow, why not give her another 30 days to try to make something happen? I would certainly rather see the home rehabbed than see the house demolished. So that's up to you. I don't know whether we need a formal vote on that. I think if you can just give us some direction, we'll proceed accordingly. But I guess in light of this email, it would be my recommendation that we extend another 30-day time period to try and get this house back on the rolls.
It's in my area, and I've talked to Mrs. Armburst, and I agree with the 30 days, but when we gave her 60 days, I brought up to you, Andy, about a question asked, is there a way to put in this that it has to commence within 10 days? That they have to start cleaning it out? And they have the 30 days to complete it or to complete the sale?
We can say that, and traditionally,
Can I make a suggestion? Why not do nothing? Right now, if you have the bid in hand, you could award it, correct?
Correct.
Let's just leave it there. She's heard everything that you've said, and if she takes advantage of the 30 days, that's fine. That way, you're not obligating yourself to grant 30 days. Rather, look, if you could, you'd tear it down tomorrow, but you don't have the bid in hand. You've told her now, vis-a-vis this public meeting, that it will probably take 30 days to get it. So it's up to her now to act on that. She knows what the time frame is. Believe me, if we could act on it sooner, maybe we would, so that the gun is at her forehead, not ours. I don't want us to oblige ourselves to say, we're going to give you 30 days, and then 30 days from now, it's still not done. This way, the clock's running. You're not doing anything. That would be my suggestion. Andy's reported on it. We've taken due notice of it. I think the advice to Andy should be to continue moving forward to get his bids in line for demolition. And that's the end of it. No more discussion. Everyone all right with that?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so that's the direction, Andy. Okay. Thank you for your input. Okay, there are two plans before you tonight, and I see that one of these is not on the agenda, and I'm not sure why. Can we amend the agenda to add it?
Yeah, that's why we're here. That's one of the reasons you have an executive or a special meeting to really set the agenda for next week.
This is a very simple plan. It's the Harper-Raymond boundary line adjustment. This plan came through, I believe, 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago on Northview Drive. And when all the dust settled and they got the corners marked, they realized, oops, we cut off our driveway access and we have a retaining wall that's now on the neighbor's property. So they're proposing to make 3 small adjustments to make the lines on paper conform with the lines in the real world. It's really just a boundary line adjustment at 3 different points. This 3 little yellow shapes are the areas that will be transferred. All the lot lines are still within the requirements for the zoning district. Doesn't affect any utilities. Planning Commission recommends approval. Next item is Brookhaven Phase 4. This is the 4th phase of the Brookhaven plan. The first 2 phases are in Penn Township. The 3rd and 4th phases are in North Huntington. Phase 3 involves home sites that are fronting on Timothy and Durst Road, so there was no new streets involved. There is a stormwater detention pond. Phase 4 would be located between Morris Avenue and the Turnpike. It does involve a single dead-end cul-de-sac street and another stormwater detention pond located down over the hill behind us. This was discussed at the Planning Commission Monday night. There are a number of questions and concerns that were set forth in the engineering review. We anticipate drawings that will hopefully address those concerns tomorrow. If we can get those reviewed by next Wednesday night, I should have a final recommendation for you then. Because of the number of dwellings and the reduced frontage, this is something that is not in compliance with the zoning ordinance for the R3 district. So it had to go before the zoning hearing board Tuesday night to get a number of variances. I have not seen their decision. I don't anticipate seeing their decision until their hearing date in August. But at that point, if they have approved the lot layout and the dimensional variances and so forth, we would be in a position to approve this plan. question for you tonight is, do you want to approve it with that as a contingency, or do you want to wait and see what the zoning hearing board does? Other conditions would be sewage planning. PennDOT needs to approve the access to Morris Avenue, which I understand the location is going to move a bit. And the Conservation District has to review the additional stormwater plan. The original layout for this phase had on-lot stormwater systems and no publicly owned stormwater plan. This is considered what they call a major modification to an NPDES permit, although it's a somewhat more expedited procedure when you already have a permit in place. They don't have to start from scratch. So I don't know what kind of time frame, but I think we're probably talking a month for that.
I have another problem here. I would never, ever put yourself in a position of approving a plan prior to the zoning hearing board acting on this. I just don't do that ever. I just think that's a bad practice because you kind of blur the lines now. You know, you say, okay, it's contingent upon getting zoning approval, and now the zoning hearing board doesn't do it. Now the developer goes to court, he argues, wait a second, maybe I'm going to be able to get that approval done in ways because I'm going to have to take to court. I worry about putting the variance before, the variance as a condition subsequent to approval. But that's your choice. I mean, you guys can decide what you want to do.
Can I correct that?
Sure.
We went to the meeting on
Name and address, Paul. Thank you.
Sorry. 12 Schuster, 8958 Hill Drive, Northampton. We had a meeting, and they did vote on it, and it was approved.
Okay.
So we're not talking about something that's not approved. It was approved.
I take my comments back. I mean, I was under the impression that they had not acted.
I'm not sure what they did approve, Bob, because your application,
I can tell you that if you want to.
well, I don't know if you've seen the decision, I have not.
Let's see if this is, can we find that out by next week? I mean, can we get something from Bob and
Well,
or the
there's
zoning
some
hearing
things that
board?
happened there. Let me explain it. It was approved on items that we gave it. I took an attorney to that meeting because this went beyond the 60-day time period. And basically, it's deemed approved, but they said, do you still want to present this? And we did. And basically, we went through the whole thing, and it was approved totally. What it amounts to is single-family homes joined in the middle with no lot line between them. So they're zero. 10-foot side.
That was one variance.
One. 10-foot side yards setback. 2. 55-foot lot frontage. And then there was several lots on there that did not qualify for the 20,000 square feet. 66, 67, 68, 69, 73, and 74, and they accepted that to be under. So that's basically what it was done. It was at the meeting. Josh was there, who ran the meeting. It was approved.
Well, Bob, that's my concern. Your application does not say anything about the lot size.
It does say it because it was talked about in there. You should have attended it. You
Well, here's your application. I don't know what was talked about, I wasn't at the meeting.
Exactly.
Your application references 503.5, subsection 2, subsection 6, which is a side yard minimum. It references subsection 1, subsection 8, which doesn't exist. I think maybe you meant subsection 2, subsection 8, which is the lot coverage. And it references the table in section 6 of the zoning ordinance.
Why are we talking there was a decision made. You can get the minutes from it if you don't believe what I just said. That's
Well,
fine.
we will indeed get the transcript at some point, and we'll get a written decision at some point, but we don't have those in our hands yet.
All right, well, I was there, telling you what I heard. Why would I say any different what they said? I had an attorney there, because these things, several improprieties were in it. One was delayed, one, the commissioners were given memos that is illegal, so that's why I took an attorney there. Even without them making a decision, it is deemed approved.
But I'm not going to argue. The only thing that could be deemed approved is what you asked for, and I just read the 3 sections that you asked for, which didn't include the lot size.
Well,
If they gave it to you, great, but I don't know that anybody knows that until we see their decision.
it was read off in a public meeting.
We need to just let it go until you look at the,
There's your solicitor, that, you heard his recommendation. I guess I would agree that I don't think we know what was granted until we see the decision.
I think that the developer comes in here and he's represented to you that it was approved. Now, I take people at their word. I mean, while Mr. Schuster's been a resident here longer than most, I would suggest to you, I don't think he's lying to us. I think now you can approve it subject to the zoning hearing board's action, that if the zoning hearing board is inconsistent with what he's told you, then you have a good reason to reject the application after you had approved it, if you make it a condition like Andy suggested. But without any action by the zoning hearing board, I wouldn't have done anything. But I mean, he's represented to you. I mean, you take people at their word. I don't think he tells falsehoods.
so we can just,
I would make it a condition like Andy suggested, knowing full well that if the zoning hearing board is not giving him what he's suggested to you that they will or have, then you could reject the application.
One of the reasons we started having the work session meeting 6 days before the regular meeting was for this reason. If there were any questions, that we would have them by the time we needed to vote. Are we saying we cannot get the answer to this question by next Wednesday? We're not voting tonight.
right, we should wait till, it should be on, if he has everything, then it should be on the agenda on Wednesday.
It'll be on the agenda Wednesday, but it's not on. But I think what the commissioner was saying, they'll find out.
We need but we would need the minutes and the results of the zoning hearing board by next Wednesday, is what you're saying, Chris, right?
Yes.
So,
I don't know about the minute, but we need the decision, which,
yeah.
if they made it, somebody has it.
Somebody should call the chairman up and ask him what they did. This isn't rocket
I think
science.
no, it's a no-brainer. We have the decision by next Wednesday, then it's not an issue. If not, then we gotta wait until next month till we get it. It's on the zoning hearing board to get it.
They made a decision. I was
I'm
there.
not doubting you, Bob, but if I don't have it in hand here from the zoning hearing board with them sign off on it, then we don't have it.
Call the president of the board.
So, I mean, that's right, I mean, that's what needs to happen. Yeah, that's the direction.
Well, when was that hearing?
It was 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
2 days.
Tuesday.
I'm not getting that senile. I can't remember that far back.
No, maybe I am, I just didn't know.
So bottom line, it's on how fast the zoning hearing board gets us the results. Right, which typically they're not that quick on getting us the results of their meetings.
They have 45 days to make a decision.
Right.
Well, what was the vote then?
Well, I agree with you. If they've taken a vote, they've already made the decision.
They made the decision. They voted on it.
Well,
It was a vote of, there was 4 members there.
I think it's
3 voted yes and 1 abstained.
Somebody just make a phone call in order and expedite the
Mike.
report.
Andy, make a phone call to the zoning board.
Please get someone other than Andy to do the phone call.
By the next part, take communication.
Get the details on what was approved.
Yeah.
Or denied, whatever.
got a court stenographer and they have to type that out for you, so I don't think you're gonna get that right away.
No, we'll know whether or not it was approved.
Right.
Yeah, so it was approved in everything.
Next item.
Is that it, Andy?
That is all the items.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So it's on to next week.
Yes, can I explain this subdivision, what it is? We try to do individual houses in there. We started out with 90 acres. We sold 20 acres to an individual, and it ends up there's about 50 acres there right now. When we laid it out, it come out that we could get 6 houses in there, or 8 houses. The problem was, the houses on the high side had a 2-to-1 slope in front of them. The houses on the low side had a 2-to-1 slope, so when you drive down, you'd be looking down at the roofs of the low side houses. I don't think my marketing people are good enough to sell that. I even took it into the township and I was told that isn't gonna work, and I agree. At that point, we decided to put multifamily in there. When we put the multifamily in there, it would fit. I did it for another reason, because of tax base in North Huntington Township. The road is approximately 700 to 900 feet, I don't know the exact number. But it doesn't take any more time to remove the snow off there, whether there's 6 houses or 8 houses. Well, we've got 28 individuals paying taxes that are gonna bring a tax base in of about $110,000 to $120,000. If we put the 6 houses in there, $30,000 taxes. So there's no question which way is the best economic position for the township. Problem with the township, they have no zoning category for the single family joint at the center. So I've built 136 in this township. This is the hardest it's ever been for me to get this thing through. First time I built them, we built 66 in Lincoln Hills. We built them under an A1A zoning character. And they were approved by you guys, and we went and built them. I didn't have to go in front of any zoning board. The second time I built them, I built 26 down in the Willows. That was under a PRD that they had in there, so we put those up. The third time I went and put 44 up at Buena Vista. And by the way, they are selling, it will be sold out probably within 12 months. Those people up there have no kids. There's one family up there that has kids. And there are no schools in Burton at all. You're gonna get the road and they're gonna clean it and it'll be done. So it's a nice thing for the township. It's not gonna hurt the schools. It's gonna bring a heck of a tax base in. So basically, we've had a very tough time getting this to this point. Now, you ask me, why am I pushing this so hard to get it done? I have 7 months out of the year that I can work, and winter comes in. And I can't move mountains. And on these hills, I think we got 70,000 cubic yards of dirt. I mean, it's nice if you can sit in a warm office and put out dictation and say, do this, do that. Well, we can't compact the soil and make it work in a dead of winter. These people on the multifamilies, as I'll call them, don't care about lots. What they want is dwelling units. Most of them are over 55 years old. It's amazing when I go up there to Buena Vista, it's like old home week up there. They enjoy themselves and have a good time. One night, I don't drink much, but they invited me into their basement. Need I say more? It was interesting. They're bringing the type of people into this township that we need. But why am I having such a hard time to get this through? I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I wouldn't push, but I have 200 people that work on my job sites. Do we want to put them out of work? All it takes is a little bit of effort to make this happen. I'm being delayed, and I don't think we should delay it. I've always had this stuff go right through the township. Now, if I had time to wait and the winter wasn't coming, I wouldn't care. I've got another subdivision that's from you people, and I don't care if it takes longer, fine. But at least I have this place to put our men to work. So if you can, I would appreciate it. Doing whatever you can to make it happen. Can I ask a few, is that all the questions you have about this? Can I ask a few questions that maybe you can help me with? 7/26/16, I submitted a request to get paving and bonds, maintenance bond numbers, so I can dedicate Hampton Heights. I again requested on 3/13, I again requested on 6/8 of this year. I want to pave the road. When can I get a bond number to do this in writing so that I can give the bank, and I'll get the bonds, I'll get them within 2 weeks, but I've been trying for a year. Anybody answer me?
We'll do some research on it.
Excuse me?
Said we'll do some research on it.
When will you have it? I mean, I've been waiting a year.
Well, tomorrow you've got me kind of booked reviewing your drawings.
I understand that, and I'm willing to work with you any way I can.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
This application for Brookhaven Phase 4 was received in our office on June 19th.
Yes.
That's less than 30 days ago. So why are you saying that we're holding you up and you're having such a hard time getting it through?
I'm saying right now.
That's exactly what you said.
Well, if that's what you think, but basically I'm saying I don't want to be held up from this point on. I didn't accuse you of anything. And please, I don't want to accuse you of anything. I'm asking to expedite it and get it done so that we can go in there and go to work. I'm not interested in the past. I just like to look at the future and make things happen. All right, my next question is the pond at Rhonda Court. July of last year, we had meetings on that site to get it done, to find out what we were going to do with that. It's been taken till now, and I still don't have anything done. On 3/27, we spent about $15,000 to $20,000 on re-engineering the water on that pond so that we could get it. We have someone that will move into that area for an office building. Fact is, it's me, RWS, and Colony, and we have another tenant over at one of the floors. We can probably build a building in there from 20 to 30,000 square feet. But I need to get this pond done so that we can get additional parking to make it happen. They've been in this township since March 27th of this year. I would like to get that moving ahead. And the other thing that's happening, the office building that we're in right now is sold. We also have agreements on the new office building that we're going to build. Now, if we can't get this done, they all put time constraints on us. And sometimes you get upset with me for pushing. But I'm going to be out of an office within 12 months. And what do? Move to Hanfield or Penn Township? I don't want to do that. I want to stay here and build a new building so that we can build a tax base in here. Because that building is going to be $4 or $5 million building that we're talking about doing. I would really like to get that stuff done. And I know I'm putting a lot of pressure on planning and zoning to get it done. But don't you have another engineer that could help out down at the Public Works building? Something. I mean, if you want the township to grow, these things have to happen. And I'm not asking for it tomorrow morning, but quickly. Now, I've been told that the occupancy permits in North Huntington Township will not be issued as a full occupancy permit if it's a sidewalk community. It's going to be a temporary occupancy permit. Well, I'd like to live with that, but my problem is there's no banks, and I've called the banks and see if they will accept that. The banks won't accept it. VA loans definitely won't accept it. They want an occupancy permit with no strings attached. It's probably because you don't have someone who will put a sidewalk in. You're the government. I'll sue against them. Do whatever you got to do, but don't try to hold up all of our people. I don't know. Is this what have you voted on this? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Is it in the ordinance to do that?
Yes, it's in the subdivision and land development ordinance.
So you're implementing that now?
No, it was implemented in 2000.
Why is it? Well, it hasn't been practiced. I mean, what do I tell these banks? That's all I'm asking. What do I tell them?
I don't know. Sidewalk's supposed to be installed before an occupancy permit is issued.
So nobody's gonna be able to move in North Huntington Township for the month of November until probably the month of April? Is that what that means? Because they can't pour concrete that time of year.
I believe our solution to that is to give a temporary occupancy permit, which is then reverted to a final occupancy permit once the sidewalk is in.
They won't accept that. They won't let them close. So what is it gonna amount to? We can't move houses or people into the township.
That's the first time I've heard of that, Bob. I have to do a little investigation.
What about getting a performance bond or something posted?
Remove.
Well, for whoever's not putting it in, I don't know. Somebody's owed a sidewalk, right?
On their own, but you can.
Here's a perfect example on the screen. One of your houses.
I built that house.
I know that.
But I didn't develop it.
Well, you don't put in the sidewalk before you build the house, you put it in as the last thing after you're done with the house.
I don't do sidewalks on all side houses. I don't do.
I'm not saying you do, I'm not saying you don't, I'm saying there's not a sidewalk there. Whose responsibility is to put it in, I don't know, but we can't go after the developer's not around.
Well, that's the same developer did major water problem, I think.
Yes, it is.
Why should all of the developers in North Huntington suffer because of something like that? One person in all these years. I mean, I definitely don't want to put sidewalks in if that's the case.
There's actually 3 on the street.
Why don't you cite them? Let us.
We have cited them, we have a court date next week.
Well, then you'll win it and it'll be over. Then why should we all get cited for it?
Why should you get cited for what?
I can't close houses in the winter months because I can't afford sidewalks.
Well, it's the first time I've heard of this, we'll have to discuss that.
I'd sure like an answer because the season's coming here after about October 15th. You shouldn't be pouring concrete for sidewalks and driveways. So what that means is we won't be able to close any of them. Yes, sir.
I think you do your best to do what you need to do in building.
Thank you.
But I want to tell you something. I think Andy does the best that he does to keep the future of this township the way it should be.
I'm not even challenging that.
Well, then, what I want you to do, and I like to see you do, is get in a room together with a cup of coffees and hash it out. This is not the forum for you guys for you to be attacking him
I'm not attacking anybody.
well, any discouraging remarks, any, whether it's about him approving something or not. You gotta get together.
I don't have any control over this stuff. I only can do what
I know you don't, Bob, okay? And there's a signature and a form for everything.
Right.
I found out what government's all about, okay? There's a form for everything. And Andy has a lot of the forms.
Well,
Then he can explain what you're looking for, and you can explain what you're looking for, and you can meet in the middle. That's what I want you to do. That's all I gotta say about it.
I appreciate it.
I really don't want to get into more
I've
about
tried that once before, and I'm going to try it again.
It's a new day, it's time to try it again.
But, okay, so basically, what do I do about, who's going to answer me when I can do this stuff? Like, do I just bring it up next month again? I mean, I talked about this a month ago.
You're talking about all the things you just discussed.
Yeah. I'm not talking about the subdivision.
Okay. You're gonna meet with Andy. Mike's gonna sit in and try to get this resolved for you for next week. Do it their best they can, okay?
When we meet, at the time.
They'll let you know tomorrow.
I have Mike, you can get with Andy and give you a call while you guys sit down and discuss it. We're gonna get a revenue to that.
Is that right, Andy?
Andy, you okay with that?
Say again?
You three are gonna meet to resolve some of the issues that Paul has.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And Bob, at that time, if you have any timelines that you need to meet, communicate that with Andy. And Andy, if you have any timelines that he needs to meet, communicate that with them. I mean, Bob, we still want you to build homes.
Well,
you know what I mean? Andy knows that.
Here's the problem I'm having with building homes here in North Huntington. You're running out of land. And I've been dealing with that problem because now I'm dealing with topography. That's why I'm building these multi-families over there on a 38% slope. I'm building this other one over on a 50-acre parcel. I'm going to get 21 lots on Colonial Manor Road. It's not being very profitable because of all the earth we have to move, and then you get these pristine stream areas that we have to stay 250 feet off of both sides of it. So out of the 50 acres, we got about 20 acres that we can use. It's getting harder and harder. And yes, there are things that we got to do, but God, try to help us and work with us. I mean,
Well, that's like I said,
I just bought a huge amount of acreage in Hempfield Township, and it's flat. I don't think my son is going to know how to work on flat land. They'll be walking horizontal again. Or vertical, I should say. All right. I'll be more than glad. You want to call me or set it up?
Be in touch.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Next item is further board comments.
I actually got one thing. Funny we were talking about drainage and issues. In Victoria Heights, Mike, you might know about this. There's a storm water retention pond towards the back of the plant. It hasn't been drained, and I think John and Andy took a look at it 2 different times. And talking with John, he was looking at possibly, putting something or allocating a project towards that, in the future for future budgets. He said, it just wasn't in the books for this previous year.
Yes.
Just to put it maybe on the radar when you guys start looking towards budgetary time.
Him and I discussed this before he left, actually, as we went through some of the things that I was not working on or less familiar with. This was one of them.
Okay.
And that was his intention, but, it might be $50,000 a year to do a few of these, but it's going to be a long-term, regular occurring thing to do. But that is going to be in the proposed budget.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, thanks.
I will warn you, the new stormwater requirements from DEP, that it's not going to hit us until 2019, but you're looking at $500,000. It's insane per year, what they expect us to do to try and reduce sediment in the streams. It's unbelievable. Cleaning out and rehabbing our old ponds counts towards that, but we've probably got 35 ponds, none of which have ever been rehabbed since they were built. So we really should be looking at doing a couple of those every year. I think the estimate, Mike, for the one in Victoria Heights, wasn't it 75, 80,000 that Bob Robinson came up with?
I haven't seen that. We haven't delved into that yet. Like I said, I had the conversation with John about budgeting, and I think the number, I have it written down, it sticks in my mind, we're going to try to do 50,000 a year. But we'll have to discuss that. Maybe that's not enough each year.
Any other further board comment?
Question from Mr. Schuster. Well, Murphy Manor Park, do you think putting a road in there is feasible going down off Haiti Lane, or don't you think?
I think the reason you're asking me that is because you took me and my son over there to look at that site. And the problem is, like the man, the architect here told you, it's the slope going down in there. Now, I could, Rob? Yes. I think that you could probably take a D8 down there and widen that road out. It wouldn't be too expensive. My biggest concern is you're probably going to have to do, and he's talking about erosion control. You're probably going to have to put sediment pond in there somewhere. And when you do that down there, well, what do you think the cost would be, Robbie, to do all that?
In all honesty, the water's getting out of hand, I just don't think it allows it. You've got a little bit of flat area there, and the rest is like 2 slopes. And if you want to add a parking lot, there's nothing left. You're not got a parking lot, not any detention grounds and everything else. You can't waste time if you want to do it.
Yeah, all right. I appreciate you guys do that. So
we could do the road. I mean, we can cut that in a couple of days. But then you're going to spend $20,000 for stone, put a new base in there and pavement. But I think DEP or soil conservation is going to be all over you for retention.
Any other or comments?
Just one comment about, since the park came up again, thanks for going to look at it along with Dave. But Tom, you were on this board, I think, when we got that park. I think Bob Murda arranged that when, I think, when the Parkview Manor Civic Association, you know, was defunct, and I think we got that when Murda was here, and we talked about developing it then, because everybody is big on recreation, including everybody on this board. But we discussed the feasibility of rehabbing that park. There's access issues, there's, the cost-benefit ratio basically just wasn't there then. I don't think it's there now. I think when Tim Hondel was in your seat, Tony, we talked about it again because people had approached him. And I think that, my opinion is kind of what we had thought before. It's best left green space. I don't see us developing a park there. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I think that was our consensus back then.
Yeah, you know what, every time this subject comes up.
The cost was, the benefit wasn't there, it was just beyond, you know, making a playground work.
I think that's why I ultimately asked the question to the engineer earlier, because I think more and more lately, the community parks are kind of the trend, I would say, of the future, because people drive to the park and they take their kids. More and more parents just aren't letting their kids leave the house without some type of supervision. So the community parks would probably be the more asset and better cost, you know, efficient way to affect more of the community.
Can I give you one idea that might work after looking at that, what I think would happen? You guys have that mower on the township mower that will go up and cut along trees and stuff like that. If it were me, what I would do is go down there and cut that path. 5% grade is not too bad for people to walk. I would pave a 4 or 5 foot path down there. Take that machine down. You might have to get a little machine to rip some trees and brush out. Make another walking path to come back up, because you said that people want to walk. And you know, you can't put parking lots. Maybe you spend $20,000 to pay somebody to put paving and that type thing, and you get what you wanted. Have a place to walk. 5% slope. I run a treadmill at 15% in the morning, so I know 5% would be pretty easy for most people. And one thing, I see Mr. Gerber here. I would just like to apologize to him and the planning commission for the ugly situation that we had.
I think we got it all resolved.
Any further board comments? If not, I need one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it 7-0. We'll have an executive session after the meeting to discuss the township manager's position.
Brown,